I was locked in a psychiatric hospital by my ex-husband for 15 years. When I got out, I found out my daughter had been tortured and left unable to bear children. But the perpetrators weren't satisfied. They set their sights on me. You might be a bit old, but you're still attractive. Make us guys happy, and we'll leave your daughter alone. I lowered my gaze, hiding the killing intent in my eyes. Mess with someone crazy, and your good days are over. As I stepped out of the psychiatric hospital, my phone chimed with a new message. I opened it and was greeted by a horrifying photo, my daughter lying in a pool of blood, her clothes in disarray. The person who sent the message added a mocking caption, "Catherine, this is a welcome home gift for your release." My hands, hanging at my sides, clenched involuntarily. My eyes, fixed on the photo on the screen, turned bloodshot. When I rushed to the crime scene, in an abandoned factory on the outskirts of town, I found only my daughter Emily, unconscious. I knelt and held my daughter's frail body tight. One terrifying thought after another flooded my mind. It was as if another soul inside me was desperate for revenge. But 15 years of therapy helped me regain a sliver of sanity. My first instinct was to call an ambulance, followed immediately by the police. Before I could hear back from the police, I received a message from the doctor in the operating room. "Your daughter's condition is critical. She's losing a lot of blood. We need to perform a hysterectomy to save her life. Time is of the essence, you need to sign the agreement immediately." A hysterectomy. My daughter had just turned 18. My eyes instantly welled up. I choked out, "Doctor, is there really no other way?" Watching the doctor shake his head resolutely, the hope in my heart began to crumble. My hand trembling, I had just managed to sign the agreement when two policemen approached me to deliver the final outcome. There were 3 perpetrators in total. They all provided psychiatric evaluations. Mental illness prevents them from being sentenced. At most, they'll be committed to a psychiatric hospital for treatment. Their families want to settle with compensation. The police said this with a casual attitude, tinged with helplessness. I clenched my hands tightly. My last thread of sanity began to unravel. 3 of them. Using mental illness to evade responsibility, huh? Tears streamed down my face, my heart twisted in agony. Police, my daughter was ruined by those boys, and she's still in the operating room right now. She's only 18. Just now the doctor made me sign saying they have to remove her uterus for her to survive. Hearing this, the 2 policemen still shook their heads in frustration. Finally, unable to bear it, they revealed a bit of the truth. Those boys come from wealthy families. Claiming mental illness is just a way to escape punishment. Take our advice, without connections, you can't touch them. You'd be better off asking for more compensation. A chilling suspicion formed in my mind about who had done this to my daughter. I hadn't been by my daughter's side for over a decade, and this happens the moment I return. The text message I received was also highly suspicious. Veins pulsed on my forehead. Then let's see who the real lunatic is. When I walked into the lobby, I saw those 3 little beasts and their parents. The parents looked completely unconcerned, sitting around chatting. They acted as if they were settling a minor issue. The leading man casually pulled out a bank card and said arrogantly, "There's $30,000 in here. Just kids messing around. Let's just drop it." The 2 boys next to him smirked, watching the show. I let out a hollow laugh. Before I could speak, the boy behind him sneered, $30,000 for nothing? Emily isn't worth that much. But you, Catherine, you might be. Why don't you have some fun with us guys? My nails dug into my palms, but I felt nothing. My eyes were locked on the boy in front of me. I knew he was the ringleader. Unable to control myself, I grabbed the scissors from a nearby table and cut the bank card in the boy's hand in half. Following through, I threw the scissors downwards, straight at the boy's thigh. His white pants instantly turned crimson with blood, followed by a sharp scream. His scream immediately drew the attention of all the parents who were still chatting. With just one look, I recognized the boy's parents. It was none other than my damn ex-husband and Sarah. They didn't seem surprised to see me at all. When they saw their son's injury, their hearts bled with pain. My ex-husband, Robert Davies, grabbed my collar directly. "Catherine, you cut my son for some bastard? Do you have a death wish?" I hid my furious emotions beneath a calm facade and said coolly, "If you're counting, your son is the bastard. After the animalistic things he's done, he'll be dead long before I am. You're completely insane. And what good could your daughter be? My son was just doing everyone a favor." I had heard such cruel words from my ex-husband more than once. He always believed that Emily, the daughter I gave birth to, was a bastard born to me, a lunatic. To be openly and legitimately with my so-called Sarah, they colluded to lock me away in a psychiatric hospital for 15 years. The police finally stepped in to stop them. "Calm down. You need to consider where you are." Driven by their protective instincts for their son, they had no time to pay attention to me. But as Robert Davies' son turned to get his wound treated, he looked at me with an evil grin. "Catherine, my name is Brandon Davies. You'd better remember that." I returned his smile. Of course, I would remember my ex-husband's son, who was a year older than my daughter. From now on, our game was just beginning. Just as I reached the entrance of the ICU ward, I received another message from Brandon Davies. "If you're curious why I targeted Emily, come to room 122 at the hotel next door tonight." I put my phone away and forced myself to calmly open the door to the ward. There was no sign of life in the ward. My daughter's body was covered in injuries, her face pale and disfigured. As I approached, my trembling fingers gently touched my daughter's palm. My daughter suddenly flinched. Her eyes fluttered open, and when she looked at me, they were filled with terror. My daughter's vocal cords were damaged, making her unable to speak for the time being. I was locked in the psychiatric hospital when my daughter was just 3 years old. This was the first time I'd seen her since getting out, and she had just gone through something horrific. It was understandable she would be resistant to me. Suddenly, the ward door was pushed open, and my daughter's eyes lit up. I stood up and saw that it was my parents. Before I could react, my father pulled me out of the ward. The next moment, a heavy slap struck me. My head snapped to the side. The force was so strong it left me temporarily deafened. My father, who was over 70, looked at me with furious disappointment. "We raised your child for 15 years. The moment you get out, Emily is ruined like this. We honestly wish you had just stayed in there. At least then everyone could have been all right." Swallowing the sting in my nose and the pain in my face, I bowed deeply to my father. "Thank you for taking care of Emily for me. I will make sure she gets justice." My father just shook his head and sighed, his eyes filled with an unspoken weariness. "Your mother and I paid off the debts Robert Davies left you with. We raised the child for you. We just hope you can stay out of trouble so we can live out our last few years in peace." After saying that, perhaps unsure how to face my father turned and walked back into the ward. Watching my father's hunched figure, a wave of sadness washed over me. I would never forget what those animals did to me and my family. Rewind time. A hereditary mental illness, passed down through generations, manifested in me. Growing up, I was eccentric and had no friends, until I met Sarah in college. She even introduced me to my ex-husband, Robert Davies. My episodes were rare, especially during those years when Robert Davies was so considerate. We got married right after graduation. But the truth came out after we were married. He was already in a relationship with Sarah, and only married me for my family's money. After the marriage, he siphoned off all my family's assets. When I found out about him and Sarah, I had a breakdown and became incoherent. Robert Davies was abusive towards me. At the time, I had just given birth to Emily. He used my father as the company's legal representative, eventually leaving the company an empty shell with massive debts. When my family needed me most, he used my illness as an excuse to have me committed to a psychiatric hospital, divorced me, and immediately married Sarah. I lingered at the ward door one last time, looking at their grief-stricken faces inside. I gripped my phone and decided to go to the hotel next door. This vengeance, this resentment, I would make them pay. I remembered what Brandon Davies had said to provoke me in the lobby that afternoon. Pretending to be interested in me was false, wanting revenge was true. How ridiculous. I hadn't even sought revenge yet, and they came looking for trouble first. I was still somewhat attractive, and the years had given me a different kind of charm. The hotel next door was a boutique hotel, and room 122, where I was heading, was decorated in a vintage style. As I entered the room, my eyes met the gazes of the three men inside. Brandon Davies saw me and chuckled. "You actually dared to come? Aren't you afraid we'll kill you?" My eyes immediately landed on the bandage on the leading man Brandon Davies's leg. I sneered, "You should be grateful I only cut your leg and not your heart. Otherwise, you wouldn't be standing here talking tough to me." Before I came, I had already investigated all three perpetrators. The ringleader Brandon Davies and his accomplices Jason and Mike were notorious spoiled brats from moneyed families, always looking for trouble and excitement. When Mike heard I had intentionally hurt his friend, his eyes glared as if he wanted to tear me apart. "You damn bitch, you must have a death wish. You hurt Brandon. If we three guys let you walk out of here on your own 2 feet, we'll take your name." I wasn't scared at all. Before I went into the psychiatric hospital, I was a Taekwondo black belt. It wasn't clear who would be leaving in an ambulance. I didn't have time for small talk. I looked at Brandon Davies and asked, "What did you mean by what you said today? Why did you target Emily?" I was inside for 15 years, completely cut off from the outside world. How did grudges from the older generation spill over to the next? Brandon Davies sat on the sofa like he owned the place, recounting the past casually. "I've always known she was the bastard child of a lunatic like you. My father could only have one child, and that was me. Your daughter was just garbage. Want to see the video of your daughter being violated by me and my 2 friends? It's truly sickening." Listening to him, I felt as if my blood was running cold. My poor daughter, the one I longed for, I didn't know if she had been tormented by them all these years. They looked down on the mentally ill, yet they were using mental illness to escape legal punishment. Brandon Davies lit a cigarette, exhaling smoke, and looked at me. "You should have stayed in that psychiatric hospital." The thought of my father's ex-wife Faye being a lunatic sickens me. If my friends hadn't wanted to have some fun with you, you wouldn't even be worthy of standing here saying this. Bang! With a violent crash, I flipped the table in front of me. The glasses on the table shattered instantly, sending shards flying into Mike and Brandon Davies, who were closest. The men's screams echoed again. I started laughing hysterically, then walked over and stepped on Brandon Davies's freshly bandaged leg, making his screams intensify. I had trained in Sonda and boxing. I grabbed Brandon Davies's right arm and twisted it forcefully. His bones snapped. I growled, "Tell me, which hand did you use to record the video?" Brandon Davies was in too much pain to speak, only able to scream in agony. My eyes were venomous. I grabbed his left hand and twisted it again. "Since you won't talk, I'll take care of both your hands for you." I had only intended to seek revenge on that couple. But since you've delivered yourselves right to my doorstep, I won't be holding back on any of you. I tossed Brandon Davies's mangled arm aside, stood up, and looked at Mike and Jason, who were picking up wooden sticks to defend themselves. I ran a hand through my hair and slowly advanced on them. "Didn't you want to have some fun with me? What's with the cold feet now?" Brandon Davies was screaming, his voice raw. Lying on the sofa, he yelled, "Go get her, you two. It's just a woman. There are more of us. How can you not take her down?" Jason heard this and instantly regained his nerve. Brandon Davies got beaten because his leg was injured. Us two were still perfectly fine. Jason immediately spat on the floor, gripping his wooden stick tightly, acting utterly arrogant. "I advise you not to struggle uselessly, or you'll suffer." Mike, his lust aroused, seemed fearless. He chimed in with a laugh, "Jason, who do you think is more interesting, the mother or the daughter? Let's find out." Jason attacked me first. I had no weapon, but the skills I had trained since childhood were more than enough to handle these 2 brats. So young, yet so foul-mouthed. Their parents didn't raise them right. I would. I had studied Taekwondo since I was a child, and no one dared to bully me. I subdued both of them in just a few moves. If you admit you faked mental illness and turn yourselves in, I might let you off easy. Confessing was harder than death for them. Jason clenched his teeth. "You want me to confess? I'd rather die." Mike, who had never failed with a woman, was humiliated and became even more abusive. What kind of skill is it that you can beat me? Where were you when your daughter was being attacked? You have no idea how pathetic she looked begging for mercy. It was just tragic. My fingers, gripping their collars, were trembling. My gaze flickered towards the sewing machine nearby. My eyes narrowed. I dragged Mike over to the sewing machine and placed his hand directly under the needle. Mike's eyes widened in terror. His fingers instinctively tried to pull back. What are you doing? You're crazy. I forcefully held his hand down. Pressing down on Mike's hand, feeling utter disgust, I started the sewing machine. The needle rose and fell, piercing through Mike's palm with every scream. His hand was a bloody mess, instantly covered in blood. Watching it, I felt an immense sense of satisfaction. Jason, watching from the side, having never seen such a scene, fainted from fright. Thinking of how they used these hands to brutalize my Emily, I wanted nothing more than to tear them limb from limb. I had punctured both of Mike's palms. Next, I stripped off his clothes, tied his hands, and stuffed rags into his and Brandon Davies' mouths, silencing their screams. Finally, I turned to Jason, who was left. I took a box of ice from the nearby refrigerator, shaved pieces into ice picks, and brutally hammered them into Jason's hands. In moments, all of their hands were ruined. The ice picks pierced their skin, blood gushing out instantly, accompanied by Jason's awakened howls. I quickly found a rag and stuffed it into his mouth, leaving the wounds exposed to the air. I took out the salt I had specifically bought before entering the hotel and sprinkled it directly onto their wounds. No matter how much pain they were in, they couldn't make a sound. I walked back to Brandon Davies. His eyes were full of malice, as if he wanted to bite me. I grabbed his throat and demanded, "Where is the video of Emily you mentioned?" This was Brandon Davies' leverage. He wouldn't give it up easily. I increased the pressure. "It's fine if you don't want to give it to me. Dead men tell no tales. Don't forget, I'm crazy." Brandon Davies' blood ran cold when he heard that. He didn't want to die, but the feeling of suffocation made him increasingly terrified. At the crucial moment, I pulled out the rag. Brandon Davies immediately choked out in fear, "Why you let me go, and I'll delete the video right now." Of course, I wouldn't let him go. After all, I was in control now. But Brandon Davies was incapable of resisting. He could only say, trembling, "My phone is in my pocket. My arm is broken, I can't get it out." I reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and entered the password he told me. In the photo album, as expected, I saw the video of Emily. Just the first few seconds they recorded were more than I could bear to watch. I couldn't imagine my daughter's helplessness at that moment. I immediately deleted the video. Then I asked Brandon Davies, "Is there a backup saved anywhere?" Brandon Davies immediately shook his head. I stood up and looked at all of them. "I'm telling you," I said, borrowing Brandon Davies' words, "this game has only just begun." Next, it was time for his shameless parents. My gaze suddenly fell on the window. Really? Seeing it was the ground floor, the corner of my lips curled up. They liked being perverts, didn't they? I'd give them a taste of their own medicine. I immediately pulled back the curtain, revealing a large floor-to-ceiling window. I opened it, and outside was the downtown street. I looked at the three naked men. Ignoring their struggles, I grabbed them one by one and threw them out the ground floor window. Seeing the empty room, I felt a sense of liberation. I picked up my bag and left. That day, the three of them became a huge trending topic online. The whole city was buzzing with photos of them lying naked on the street. I bet they wouldn't call the police. After what they had just done, they'd only seek private revenge. But I didn't expect Robert Davies to act so quickly. He found me at the swimming pool where I was working. The moment he saw me, he grabbed my head and shoved it under the water, just like he used to do decades ago. The suffocating sensation of drowning, combined with Robert Davies' Sonda background, left me temporarily unable to fight back. Just as I was about to give up, in the last second of despair, Robert Davies released me. "You dared to break my son's arm? Believe me, I'll have you locked back in the psychiatric hospital." I glared viciously at the enemy before me. I only blamed myself for trusting the wrong person. Your son breaking an arm is nothing compared to what they did. What beef did Emily have with them to deserve this kind of revenge? Robert Davies, dressed impeccably but a beast underneath, always spoke the cruelest words. I detest everything about you. Who knows if Emily wasn't just some bastard you had while you were out of your mind? Let me tell you, you spent 15 years in that psychiatric hospital, and your daughter suffered 15 years of torment at school. I yelled, furious for my child. She's your daughter too. Why were you so cruel to her? If you hated everything abo. Me, why did you get involved with me in the first place? Robert Davies took the cigarette from his mouth. The tip was still burning. He habitually pressed the butt onto my arm, which was already covered in cigarette burns. I bit my lip hard, maintaining my dignity, refusing to make a sound. Robert Davies lit another cigarette. Wearing his gold-rimmed glasses, he looked like a devil. Your whole family deserves to die. Your parents couldn't have children at first, so they decided to adopt a child to bring some life into the home. But who knew, a year later, your mother got pregnant with you, and the adopted boy was sent back to the orphanage. I was that boy who was adopted and then sent back. I just changed my name, none of you recognized me. Everything your family had should have been mine. I was just taking it back. My head pounded with pain. I had heard my parents mention it. The boy they adopted before was too volatile, acting one way in front of people and another behind their backs, even at the age of 6. They had intended to teach him properly, but later discovered that, due to his insecurity, the boy tried to harm me when I was just born. That's why they quickly sent him back. I never expected that years later, he would return for revenge. Robert Davies repeatedly pushed my head under the water, letting me despair only to surface again, pushing me closer to madness. You shouldn't have been born, and neither should your daughter. Your whole family is insane. In my panic, I fumbled in my pocket. My finger was suddenly cut by the eyebrow razor inside. I immediately clenched it in my hand, aimed at Robert Davies's arm, and slashed. His blood mixed with the swimming pool water. Seizing the moment he recoiled in pain, I counterattacked. I snatched the cigarette from his mouth, grabbed his neck, and shoved his head back into the pool, pressing the still burning tip directly onto the fresh wound on his arm. Knowing Robert Davies wasn't a strong swimmer, I kicked him straight into the swimming pool. Splash! A huge wave erupted. I watched the struggling Robert Davies in the water and laughed out loud. You're the real lunatic, through and through. You don't love your own daughter, but you treasure someone else's child. You deserve to die 1,000 deaths. A truth about Brandon Davies's parentage was something I learned when I was unwell, but I'd almost forgotten after being locked up for so long. Fortunately, Robert Davies's provocation jolted my memory of the past. But revealing it now wouldn't achieve what I wanted. I straightened up, swayed slightly, and walked away, not bothering to listen to another word of Robert Davies's furious curses from the pool. During this time, I visited Emily in the ward. I didn't dare go in directly, afraid seeing me would trigger bad memories for her. I only watched through the glass pane in the door. Emily lay in the hospital bed, lifeless, like a discarded doll, always emanating a deep sadness. I covered my mouth and wept silently. Someone had anonymously sent me many photos of Emily being bullied from childhood to now. From small things like bugs being put in her water cup and being isolated, to larger incidents of abuse that led to her current state. I wouldn't let a single person who hurt me or Emily get away with it. That day, clutching Robert Davies's and Brandon Davies's hair, I went to the DNA testing center. After returning home, I searched for photos of me and Sarah from the year we met. Sure enough, in many of our photos from that time, besides Robert Davies, there was another man. Sarah's friend, Michael. I remembered that in less than 3 days, Robert Davies was scheduled to hand over the company to Brandon Davies. When that happened, if I revealed the truth on the big screen, I shuddered to think how Robert Davies, a man prone to violence, would treat his wife. For more concrete evidence, I cut out the photo of Sarah and Michael and mailed it, along with a note, to Sarah's home. Sarah quickly panicked. As soon as she received it, she called me, Catherine, what do you want? Gripping the DNA results, I gave a chilling smile. Do I really need to spell out what you've done? A shiver ran down Sarah's spine. I continued, "Today at 3 p.m., I'll be waiting for you at my house." Sarah couldn't sit still. She knocked on my house door before 2 o'clock. I had already set up miniature cameras from various angles. As soon as Sarah entered, she dropped to her knees, grabbing my leg. "What happened back then? I only agreed to Robert Davies's plan because I loved him so much. I had no choice." I shook her off in disgust. "And was it no choice when you had people assault me too? If I hadn't had some skills, I probably would have died that day." Sarah's face turned cold. Seeing my attitude, she dropped the act. "What do you want?" I threw the DNA results in her face. "Brandon Davies is Michael's child." Sarah shrieked. "I was forced back then. I was a victim too." "That doesn't matter," I said. "What matters is how Robert Davies sees it." Sarah realized then. I hadn't asked for anything. Her fingers clenched. "Are you setting a trap for me? Do you have cameras installed?" Before I could respond, she pulled a dagger from her pocket, gasping for air. "Then I'll just have to kill you. I won't let anyone stand in the way of my son's future." Sarah's amateurish attempt at fighting was no match for me. A simple kick disarmed her. The dagger clattered to the side. I placed my foot on Sarah's chest, looking down at her. "Let's see about that." Afraid she would cause more trouble, I locked Sarah in the room and clipped the crucial parts of the video. Soon it was the day of Robert Davies's company handover ceremony. I paid someone to switch the screen display to the video I had. I replaced the agreement with the DNA report. Just as both were revealed, I brought Sarah in. The video played, and my voice echoed through the lobby. "Brandon Davies is Michael's child." Everyone present was stunned, especially Robert Davies. His violent instincts exploded. The son he had cherished for 19 years was a fraud. In the crowd, Robert Davies's eyes were bloodshot. Staring at the DNA report, he immediately spotted Sarah trying to escape. Brandon Davies saw that things were going wrong and quickly hobbled away. Robert Davies rushed down the stairs and grabbed Sarah. Filled with rage, he couldn't hear anything else. He punched and hit Sarah repeatedly. "You dared to deceive me, made me raise a bastard. I'll beat you to death." Security guards saw what was happening and quickly tried to intervene, but Robert Davies's strength was too great, they couldn't stop him. By the time the police arrived, Sarah was dead on the spot. Robert Davies was immediately arrested. This time, caught red-handed, he couldn't escape. I stood at the back of the crowd, feeling an unspeakable sense of triumph. But just then, 2 policemen approached me. "We suspect you are connected to a case. Please come with us to the police station." I didn't know which case they meant, so I followed the police to the police station, completely bewildered. Only at the police station did I learn that Brandon Davies, Jason, and Mike, who had injured my daughter, were attacked right after escaping from the scene. Brandon Davies was crippled, Jason was left impotent, and Mike was brain damaged. My brows furrowed. I had been preoccupied with Robert Davies and Sarah recently and had no time to spare. How could I possibly have hired someone to teach them a lesson? "Do you have any evidence that it was me?" I asked. What if they had too many enemies and were targeted for revenge? The police looked troubled. This case was indeed tricky. The attacker was highly skilled, evaded surveillance, and left no fingerprints. They could only think of me, who had recently made enemies with them, to question. In the end, they released me due to insufficient evidence. But when I went to the hospital to see my daughter as usual, I found only a cell phone in the room. My daughter was gone. I was about to go look for my daughter when her phone suddenly lit up with a message that made my heart skip a beat. "We crippled those guys. Send the final payment." It was my Emily. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Just then, my daughter pushed the door open and wheeled herself in. Seeing the look on my face, she seemed to understand. She looked at me like a stranger and took the phone from my hand. My voice trembled slightly as I carefully asked her, Did you do this?" I didn't dare mention their names, afraid my daughter would have a breakdown. But my daughter wasn't just a little girl who would let people bully her. She sat in the wheelchair, looking out the window, completely calm. "Yes." I realized that relying on anyone else is useless. I didn't want them dead. I wanted them to live in pain in this world. My heart ached. I knelt beside her. If you wanted revenge, I would have done it for you. How could you take such a huge risk yourself? What if the police caught you? What about the rest of your life? You get revenge for me? Where were you when I was being bullied as a child and abused as a young woman? My life is completely ruined. I don't want to hear your empty words. My daughter's eyes were cold. She gripped the wheelchair handles. Because everything that's happened to me is your fault. I saw the hatred in my daughter's eyes, and I was acutely aware of my own guilt towards her. The only thing I could do now was clear the obstacles in her path and ensure she had a peaceful future. I was also about to complete my final task: reclaiming the assets they had seized. Now all key assets were in Brandon Davies's hands. He loved gambling, and being crippled, his only outlet was online gambling. I had studied software development. I used a fake online persona as a beautiful woman to attract him, then lured him into a trap software. I put my entire fortune on the line, betting on his competitive nature. In the beginning, he won big and made a significant return. Later, he kept losing, but he was addicted. How could he quit? I used the money he sent me to acquire his company at a low price when it was on the verge of bankruptcy. After completing the task, I immediately took the app down, leaving Brandon Davies with nothing but a pile of debts he owed. Gambling is the most direct way to ruin a person. I left the remaining money for my parents and my daughter. Meanwhile, the police were gradually tracing the crime back to my daughter through population screening. I had prepared thoroughly. I took the records of my 15 years confined in the psychiatric hospital and a new diagnosis from the hospital and went to the police station to surrender. The final judgment was compensation of $30,000 per victim. After everything was settled, I didn't return anywhere. I just took one last look at Emily. She was recovering well and could walk on her own again. With tears in my eyes, I handed over the last of the assets to them. Taking one last look at the warm, bright sun, I returned to the psychiatric hospital where I had lived for 15 years. For someone like me, with mental illness, returning to the psychiatric hospital to spend my life quietly wasn't such a bad choice after all.